Good morning, Claremont Center for Spiritual Living. How are you this morning? I'm Reverend Tracy Earlywine, and I am so glad you are joining us for this weekly meeting where we come to remember the truth of who we are. That the love and the power within us is something that we recognize and use in our daily lives to create not only a better world for ourselves, but a better world. So thank you so much for joining us, and I am looking forward to spending some time with you this morning. I'm going to start off today with invitations, telling you a little bit about what's going on at the center. We have several wonderful things coming up. Next Sunday night, the 13th at 7 p.m., we are going to have an in-person service outdoors in our meditation garden. So I want to invite you to come at 7 o'clock to the campus in the garden. You can park out front, come in the front gate, and we will socially distance your chairs because you're going to bring your own chair, you're going to bring your own mask, and if you'd like, you may bring your own beverage, and we'll spread out in the garden and have a service in person. Now, what I know is that the times we have been able to get together, whether one-on-one or maybe Friday morning donuts at 9 o'clock, we've been having a really good time with that. There is something so nourishing about being in each other's presence, even if we are staying apart from each other, even if we are adhering to all of the guidelines to stay healthy. I invite you to come join us. Now, if it's not for you to come, you're just not comfortable, that's quite all right. We're going to love you up anyway, because what we know is that whenever any of us gather together, we are loving and supporting our entire community. But if you can make it 7 o'clock, bring your mask, bring your chair. We'll have a few extras. Better if you have your own. And just your joy. We are so excited to see each and every one of you. So do come if you can next Sunday at 7. I mentioned the Friday morning donuts. We're going to continue that through September. So Friday mornings, 9 o'clock, bring your coffee, bring your chair, wear your mask. I'll bring the donuts and the coffee warm-ups. And it's a great opportunity for a little conversation and a chance to see each other. And our garden right now is just beautiful. Little shout out to Bobby and Brad and to our board who have been spending time in the garden, making it neat and tidy and green. And spraying for the mosquitoes. So you should be able to enjoy the garden without any extra bites. That's the goal. So know with me that our times together are nourishing and enjoyable. I also want to invite you to our book study. Not this week, but next week we start our study on Eric Butterworth's In the Flow of Life. Now, if you would like to join us, you have a choice of Thursday afternoons at 1 or Saturday afternoons at 3, but you do need to register because I need to get you some information. We have a little pre-reading to do before that first class. So if you will contact the office either via email or by calling the office, we'll get you registered, we'll get you the information on that first assignment, and we'll be ready to come together to discuss this wonderful book that has to do with our abundance, not just financial, but in every area of our life. So it's a great book and it'll be a great conversation. So do join us for that. Wednesday night, of course, we have our meditation and our gateway service. There's a conference call number for the meditation that our practitioner Nisa Burrow leads, and we have our gateway service at 7 via Zoom. All of the links, all of the information is in our weekly email or online on our website. So do take advantage of that. Come see us on Wednesday. It's always a great discussion and a great opportunity to get filled up. Okay, I think that's all I have for announcements. I just want to remind you that our practitioners are available to you all the time for prayer support. You can find their contact information on our website, in the email, or you can call the office and access our prayer request line, and they will take your request into prayer. You know, sometimes when you're in the middle of something, it helps a lot to have someone else know the truth with you and for you, and we know the power of prayer. So do take advantage of their offer to be of service to you whenever you might feel that desire to have a little extra support. I want to thank everybody, too, that helps make this production possible. We have recording people, we have posting people, we have Living Beyond Limits, which has generously donated their mini studio, and of course Jeff, who does the editing and posting of our Sunday service, and to all of you who continue to contribute and support what it is that we do. This community is yours, and we are thriving, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. We are doing well, and I am so glad that you are joining us on this journey. All right, so let's begin our morning service. This morning we welcome a guest practitioner. It's Barbara Conant, who is a practitioner at Living Beyond Limits. She will be doing our invocation and an opening reading. But let's start first by going within. I'm going to invite you to simply listen to the sound of the bowl as you close your eyes and take that first deep breath. And letting that tone resonate with your heart space, that place of love and unity. That place within where we remember that you and I and Spirit are one.
Taking this moment in time, as we step out of our busyness and move into that center within, where we know and recognize the divine love and the divine light that is always present with us. And I know that there is one power and one mind throughout the entire universe. And it surrounds me and it surrounds everything with its love. And I know that I am truly one with this infinite power of love and the creative design of life. And I know that this truth is for everyone as they recognize and know that they are a divine power of life in the world. And I also recognize that the divine is expressing itself in and through this service. And I know that the divine is here, present right now, in the words that are spoken by Reverend Jennifer and by Reverend Tracy, as their light shines forth, that we all may experience a greater divinity of love and of the presence of Spirit that dwells within Reverend Tracy and Jennifer, and that they so graciously share their knowledge with us today. And so I bless this time. I bless the centers for each one of them. And I am grateful for this day and for all the good that is present right here and right now. And I say, and so it is. Hello. My reading today is from The Art of Life by Ernest Holmes. The law of life is already in your mind. The problem is to apply it to your everyday needs. Naturally, the intelligence and the law, which are God, are abundantly able to bring to you or to anyone everything necessary to happiness, to health, and to success. Whether you can call these things spiritual or material makes no difference, for God is in everything and through everything, and God is everything. The power of life and the creative mind within you is a spiritual power, able to bring you permanent peace, increasing happiness and joy, and even greater material abundance. Those things which have made us miserable and unhappy can be eliminated through the conscious use of this mind power. While it is true that God power is always with us, it is not true that we always realize its presence. To realize this is to be able to make conscious use of it, to direct it for ourselves and for others. Knowing that the creative energy of the universe is at your disposal, and that the same power which made everything is flowing through you, would you not naturally feel that you possessed the pearl of great price? Knowing how to use this power, would you not feel that you were on the verge of a new experience of wonderful and limitless possibilities? Would you not have a new enthusiasm about living? Accept this God power and use it for good, for others and for yourself. And so it is.
Thank you, Barbara. That was just beautiful. I'm so glad. So glad to hear your voice. I've missed you. I've missed you. So now we're in for a special treat. We are talking about living science of mind this month. It's all about how our philosophy is something that we don't just learn about, we actually live it. And so this month I'm doing a series of talks on answering your questions about how to make this philosophy practical. And today I'm teaming up once again with my best friend Jennifer. Reverend Jennifer and I are discussing a list of questions that she received that has some really juicy stuff in it. So we decided we would sit down in front of the unlit but picturesque fireplace. You know, it's a little warm outside, so we're not lighting the fire, but we are going to have a little fireside chat based on questions that have come to us about science of mind, and it's titled, Since You Ask. Please join us.
So here we are for our fireside chat.
Welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us.
And so our first question today is this. In religious science, what is the purpose of the physical experience? Why are we having it? Why is it necessary? My answer is that we are having this physical experience and to express who we are as spiritual beings, to express our own divine nature and our own infinite potential. And as we do that, what happens is then God is more fully expressed as we express. And so in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says, in God expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being. And in 365 Science of Mind, it says, we were created to express the nature of the divine, the source of our being. So we have incarnated in these bodies so that we might fully express and give way to that divine presence so that it might express itself. And as we do that, we are expressing our own divine essence. So we've come to express our essence. So what that looks like then is as we love, as we have relationships, as we create our lives, as we learn and grow and unfold who we are, as we experience joy, as we share ourselves with others in the world, every time we do one of those things, we are expressing that divine presence. So as we are having loving relationships, we are expressing the love of the divine. As we are creating a life for ourselves, we are expressing the creativity of the universe. As we accomplish things and do things, we are unfolding and expressing that divine potential. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the difference between a composer having a song in his head and then actually putting it on paper and having it played. Because as long as that song is in the composer's head, it's only an idea. It's a potential in mind. But once that song is put down on paper, and then all of the different instruments play the different parts of that song, and the singer sings the song, it comes to life. It is expressed, and it is experienced, and it's given life. It comes into form. So the difference between us incarnating or not incarnating is like that song coming to life.
I don't even have anything to add to that. I think that that's a really good example. You know, we have this physical life, And part of me thinks, the why almost isn't important. We just do. We're here. So what do I do with it? Well, create and express. That's what I enjoy about other people. That's what I enjoy in relationships. Anything that brings joy nourishes life. And so I see our physical expression as simply the way in which, like you said, we are spirit expressing in the world. And that element of creativity, that sense of love and growth and transformation that we experience throughout our lives is its own purpose for being. It is our life lifting and uplifting our own consciousness as well as the people around us. And that to me is a good thing. That's what we do. All right. So our next question is illness an intentional part of the human experience? So here we have this wonderful life and this expression of creativity, and sometimes what life shows up as is illness or lack or fear or loss or pain. And it seems counterintuitive that if we're spiritual beings that we would have this experience that seems so negative. In October 95 Science of Mind magazine, Ernest Holmes is quoted as saying, "To free ourselves from the forms of lack, unhappiness, physical disease, etc., is the whole aim and purpose of the science of mind and spirit." So this philosophy that we teach is here specifically to help us understand life from a perspective of healing, of allowing us to return to a state of harmony and balance and nature's way with us. And what I mean by that is, our body has the ability to heal itself. In other words, the doctor may clean the wound and apply antibiotics and maybe give you a stitch or two, allowing for healing to happen, but the body itself is what heals. We don't do that. It's like we plant a seed and the plant grows. We don't make the growth happen, but we might tend the soil and make sure there's enough water and enough light. So we have this healing nature in us, and Holmes actually talks about that. This is a little book called A Holmes Reader on Practical Wisdom, and he talks about a curative pattern. He says there's a curative something at the center of every person. There's a pattern of perfection at the center of every form. All curative arts, in other words, those who are involved in healing, all curative arts recognize this center. All agree that disease, fear, and unhappiness are not our natural state of being. Any physician will tell you that the tendency of a disease is to get well. Any psychologist will tell us that the tendency of disintegration is to reintegrate. Any metaphysician will tell us that there is an ever-present life. We must all awake from our sleep to the knowledge that wholeness and completion already exist at the center of our being. And what that means is that healing is the process of discovery or uncovering or rediscovering the wholeness we already are, the completion that is already part of our nature. We have this human experience, and trauma happens, and pain happens, and we experience disease or difficulty or obstacles in our thinking or maybe mental illness. But what we're really doing in this life is uncovering our way back to the greater truth, the divine nature that we are, because we are not just human. We are not only this human experience. We are also that divine center, that place of wholeness and completion. Some people would say, and some traditional religions would teach that, illness is a test or a punishment or something deserved or not deserved. And that is something Science of Mind has never agreed with. I know when I went through cancer treatment that there's a moment, well, first of all, I was in ministerial school and I couldn't understand how, if all I was doing was praying and studying and immersed in spiritual truths all day, every day, how could I possibly be sick? Because obviously my thinking was right? So there's this tendency to ask, what did I do wrong? How did this happen to me? Why am I suffering like this? And what I got from my mentors was a reframing of the illness as a way of understanding how I might be served by this experience in my ministry. What is it that wanted to come forth from me? How could I understand this illness in a way that showed me my better self? In other words, moving through the process of illness and recovery changed me. Reverend Dr. Margaret Stortz, one of the elders in Science of Mind teaching, says that her cancer experience didn't define her, it opened her. And I think that's really what happens when we experience any kind of trauma. Something is being called forth from us. We are being opened up to. And what I know is that I have a different sense of compassion. I have a different sense of understanding when someone comes to me for support and it's around physical health. I come from a different place than I would have 15 years ago before all this happened. I also saw it at the time as a call to receive care. You know, you can't give what you don't have. How can I be more caring, more giving, more of service, which is what my calling is, if I have never received from others that support, that love, that help? So this whole idea that, you know, that illness is something to avoid, I don't think we can avoid it, because we are physical beings in a physical body, and the temporal changes all the time. We don't have a choice about that. Everything changes, right? Except the eternal truth, except the divine nature, except the spirit that we are. And so Science of Mind is here to teach us how to be in the human experience, regardless of what it looks like, from a place of our own power, from a place of our wholeness, as a way of understanding our lives and realigning ourselves with the harmony of life. Like that concert you were talking about, you know, when all the instruments play together, when my mind and body and spirit are in alignment, there is a harmony, there is a song of life that I'm singing, and that's the process of discovery that this life is to me. Anything else?
The only thing that I would add to that is that in old-time religious science, people would ask themselves when they got sick, what's wrong in my consciousness? What did I do wrong? And just what you said, I think in addition to the teachings that our thoughts greatly impact what happens in our lives, I think we are eternal beings on this pathway of unfolding ourselves, unfolding all of our potential. And I think that any time a catastrophe of any sort happens, including an illness, that there is a huge opportunity in that to discover things about ourselves, to discover things about life, to unfold something greater. And so it's not bad and wrong. We like to name it bad and wrong. It's just the experience that we're having at the moment.
Right. Exactly. Thank you.
And so my second question is there a, quote, will of God? So in the Science of Mind textbook, it says, true prayer must be, thy will be done. But the implication relative to the will of God is this prayer is not a submission to the inevitability of evil or limitations. It is knowledge that the will of God is always good. And he goes on to say, the will of that which is infinite can never be finite. Everything then should tend to expansion and multiplication in the divine plan. That is the will of God. It has to be beauty, truth, and harmony. We should interpret the will of God to be everything that expresses life without hurt. Anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it does not harm anyone, must be the will of God for us. So my answer to the question is there a will of God? Yes. The will of God is simply to express, and to express in its fullness. And the more fully we express in our lives, the more fully that divine presence has the opportunity to express. I think that we are meant to live full and rich and satisfying lives. And I think the more satisfied we feel and the more fulfilled we feel, the more fully God has expressed. And so if you think about it, it feels so satisfying and so fulfilling to be in love or to have loving relationships of any sort. It feels so satisfying and fulfilling to raise a child or to be successful or to accomplish something. To be successful, whether it's obtaining a college degree or even making a new recipe. Every time we do one of those things, that divine is getting to express in a more fuller way, in that loving relationship as love, in that new recipe or in our school as intelligence and as creativity, what you will. But it's always allows God to express more fully, and I believe that is the only will of God.
I agree. I think that, we say in Science of Mind that life is for us, and life is another word for God. It's the energy of all things. And by any name, it is what builds up. It's what nourishes. It's what fulfills. It's what grows things. It's what evolves. And so the will of God has to be the will of good. In other words, the highest and best in any situation. And, we're not always, as human beings, really good at discerning what's highest and best. We get a little selfish sometimes, or we don't realize what we're doing could be destructive to someone else. But as we learn and as we grow, we continue to fulfill our own desires in a way that does not do harm elsewhere. And that can only be what life is. It's about that cycle of continuous growth and not, as superstition would tell us, that any bad thing we can't explain must be the will of God. That's kind of an old-fashioned way of looking at it. And Science of Mind doesn't go there. We know that God is about the goodness, the wisdom, the peace, the beauty, the joy. And if that's the truth of God, then that is the truth of life's path for us. It's what we live. Okay. So my second question is, what does the philosophy of Science of Mind say about suffering? Okay, we don't. No, that's not true. Here's what Ernest Holmes has to say. The person who is in pain or fear naturally wishes to be released from it, and as quickly as possible. I do not believe that God has imposed suffering upon anyone to punish him or teach him a lesson. Human beings seem to have assumed the prerogative of determining that God inflicts the suffering, when actually man appears to be responsible for his suffering through ignorance of his divine nature. So we suffer when we feel stuck, when we feel victimized, when we feel traumatized, when we think things should be different than they are, or different than they turned out differently than we expected. The definition of suffering is twofold. One is that we patiently endure loss or pain or lack. And the other one is that it's a punishment or an affliction that results in pain being felt. Well, pain being felt is part of the human condition. We've talked about that. It's, the emotional spectrum of humanity includes everything from absolute bliss to the darkest, deepest depression. And that we experience any or all of those emotions in between is part of our being human. What the philosophy says, what Science of Mind teaches, is that it's not something that's done to us. We are not meant to suffer. When we do suffer, there are ways in which we can heal, ways in which we can move forward. My biggest suffering experiences come when I feel like I don't have any choices, that whatever the pain is going to go on forever, that there's no way through, or there's no resolution, or how could this possibly get better? Everything is wrong with this. And that's not the truth. It doesn't matter how dark the night is, the dawn always comes. And when we look back on our lives and we think about things that have happened to us, or we remember how difficult things were, just remember when you were a teenager. How many times were you sure the world had ended for you? And yet our perspective shifts over time. And our perspective shifts when we spend time talking through a problem with a loved one, or we take a walk in nature, or we get out in the sunshine. In other words, when we think there's nothing we can do, or that we will be here forever, that's not the truth. The truth is we will move through, we will move on. Now, some trauma we bring on ourselves, and we do things that end up hurting us or hurting someone else. And what Science of Mind teaches is the law of cause and effect. So our actions have consequences. We change the action, we change the consequences. So when we've made a mistake, when we've hurt someone, when we've done something that's caused something unintended that's negative, we make amends. We correct our behavior. We change the way we see things. As Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better. And so this process of learning how to live life through the suffering that humans feel is part of why we're here. It's the teaching that we have, to remind ourselves that life is for us, that even difficult situations teach us and grow us, right? Grow us into something more of what we are. And that we're never stuck. We're never permanently in anything, because as a human being, things will change. Our experience will change. And we have something to say about the direction of that change. The way we think, the way we understand how life works, the more we study that in our life which we're grateful for. Those are the things that lift us out when things are difficult. It's not that this philosophy makes it so nothing bad ever happens, nothing difficult ever happens. What it does, though, is it changes the way in which we're able to manage or respond or make a difference in how we see what it is that we're going through, and that we do it from a place of love. We do it from that trust and knowledge of wholeness. We believe that there's a way forward because that is the very nature of life.
And the one thing I would add to that, I think just what you said, there is pain, there is physical pain that our bodies have. There are things that happen that we don't like, and we could call that pain too. There's a difference between pain and suffering. And I think, to me, the suffering is always about the story that we're telling ourselves. It's always about the story. This will never end. I won't make it through. This is horrible. I shouldn't be having to endure this. All of those stories, the story is what creates the suffering, not the experience that we're having.
Right. Creates a tension between what's happening and what I'm telling myself about what's happening and how bad and awful it is. I can control what I say.
Right. Exactly.
I can control how I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my last question is, do surrender and acceptance have any relevance in the science of mind with respects to being the co-creator of your life? And so let's talk about surrender first. And my answer is yes. Surrender does have a place in the teachings of the science of mind. It is about surrendering the lesser to the greater. It's not about surrendering something or surrendering yourself or your life to a man God that's up in the sky. It's more about surrendering what isn't working, about surrendering our fear or our worry, say, to peace. Or I surrender my problem to the absolute infinite intelligence that already lives within me, that intelligence that permeates everything. I surrender my problem to harmony, or I surrender my problem to good. I'm surrendering my little self, my little ego self, my fear, my worry, and that voice to my greater self, to the part of me that already knows, the part of me that is already peace, that is already wisdom, that is already the divine knowingness of the universe. And so what I can do is, let's say that I'm having fear that I've lost my job and I'm never going to get another job, I can actually take that and say, I surrender that fear to peace. Because the peace is already inside of me. The fear is inside of me, but so is the peace. I can surrender that fear to peace. I can surrender my unbelief to my faith that's already living here. I can surrender my controlling behavior and thinking that I need to control everything that's going on into knowing that the universe is for me, that life is for me. I can surrender it to my trust, surrender it to trusting the journey of life. And so in the Science of Mind magazine from April of 2015, there's writings from Ernest Holmes, and it says, pure spirit exists at the center of all form. Of itself, it is formless, but it is ever giving birth to form. If pure spirit is at the center of everything and is always responding to our thought, there is no limit to its manifestation, for there is no limit to its manifestation for us except the limitations that we set. So what really happens, I think, is in surrender, we let go of that tight hold, and we let go of our fear, and we let go of our apprehension, we let go of the struggle and the fighting against, and move into a state of relaxation, which creates a state of openness, which creates a state of receptivity. So we're relaxing into the good, and we're relaxing into the divine. In that relaxation, we create a space for the solution to come forward. We create a space within us for the answer to reveal itself. We create a space because we're more open for the way to reveal itself in our lives. So to me, it's really about the energy of holding tight and gripping versus relaxing and being open. So it's about being tight versus being open. And the second one, does acceptance have any relevance in the science of mind? I say yes, because in the science of mind, we don't pretend that something that's happening in our lives isn't pretending. We aren't in denial. We don't act like it's not happening. Christian Science says this world isn't real. They deny that it's real. We don't do that. We accept that it's actually happening in our lives. We're not in denial. So, for example, I'm not in denial that politics right now, that politicians and political parties seem to be extremely at odds with each other. I recognize it is a fact, but it's not a necessity. I realize that it is an experience, but it's not a necessity. And it's the same thing with anything in our lives. If you are experiencing ill health, I can realize it's a fact, it's an experience, but it's not a necessity. It is an experience that I'm having, but ill health is not a spiritual truth. The spiritual truth is that wholeness is, that harmony is, that perfection is, that peace is. If I'm having an experience of lack of money in my bank account, I can recognize that that is actually happening in this physical world, but it's not a necessity. And lack is not a spiritual truth. The truth is, I live in an abundant universe. The truth is that creative intelligence expresses itself in me and leads me and guides me into perfect avenues to make money, to receive my good. The truth is that wholeness and harmony and peace and order are always present. So the truth is we live in this infinite universe, in this boundless good, and when we recognize that, when we embody that belief, it changes what's going on in the outside world around us.
So a couple things. When you talk about surrender, Susan Corso in God's Dictionary she breaks down the word, and it is to give back up. It's not to give up, right? Sometimes, and especially in the Western world, we think surrender means you're giving in, you gave it up, you're throwing in the towel, you're the loser. Who wants to be a loser? But in a spiritual sense, it's to give back up, as in It's not yours to begin with. So what are you surrendering? You're surrendering the things that are less than true for you in this moment. So how I used to be doesn't serve me anymore. You know, I used to be anxious about speaking in front of people. That would not serve me in my current profession. And so I've given that up in order to realize a greater good, which is the power of words and connection. And so we have this ability to release what no longer serves, and that is called surrender. And that place of receptivity that you find yourself in when you let go of how you think it should be or what you're supposed to do or all those negative things that go on in our head, when we let that go, we are moving into a state of acceptance of, oh, something more can happen. Something new is available. I can accept a new way of thinking. I can understand the political drama from a different perspective. I can remind myself that I am coming from a place of love that allows me to see ways to move forward that anger does not, or that fear does not, or that a sense of lack might hold me back from. So this idea of surrender and acceptance is about allowing the human experience to be as it is and still knowing and accepting there's something more. That there's somewhere to go with this, that there's a way forward, that infinite possibility we talk about in Science of Mind is here too, is here now, is here for me now. So,
Nice.
Okay, thank you. All right, and my last question is whether or not hope exists in the Science of Mind philosophy. Well, Ernest Holmes in the text is very clear that hope is not wishing. Like, gee, I hope I find a job soon. That's the kind of hope that we do not teach. That's what it is not. It's more along the lines of an earlier definition of the word hope. So in the 1200s, the word hope was used to mean an expectation of something desired. And Ernest Holmes has a lot to say about expectancy, about expecting the good, about treating and moving your feet. So you do your prayer work, you align yourself with the greater truth, you remind yourself that you're more than your human experience. And then that in itself creates an expectation that there's going to be something for you to do, something better for your life, some other way of living your best life. So hope is about this intention with an expectation of fulfillment. So when we talk about expectancy, we're saying that there is good in life. Now, I may or may not be feeling peace in this particular moment, but there is still peace. And so if I take a moment to go out in nature or talk to a friend or just get quiet in myself for a while, I'm giving myself room for that peace to appear. And that sense of hope, that expectancy of good is something that I can tap into anytime and for any situation, because that possibility is existing everywhere. So here's what I mean by that. So you find yourself, and so say you lost your job, or you don't have work in this particular economy, and it would be really easy to think that, oh my God, this is going to go on for months, and I'm going to lose my house, and I can't pay my rent, and no, all the things that we worry about that get spun up in us. Or we could remind ourselves that there is infinite possibility in every circumstance. What that means is that there are a million ways my life could unfold. Some of them are actually good. Why not live in that energy? Why not bring my thinking around to, I don't know what could happen, but it could be fabulous. I could have a chance conversation with a stranger that leads me to a contact that takes me to a job, and all of a sudden I'm living a life of luxury. Why not? It's just as likely as I'll never find a job for the next 12 months. Where would you rather live? So again, this philosophy is about how we live as human beings when we remember that we're also divine. When we allow the human to give way to the divine, to let things flow through us. You know, Ernest Holmes says, let us learn to see that everyone is evolving in consciousness. In other words, we're all on this path of discovery and uncovering the wholeness that we are. And so hope is this expectancy of good. It's not wishing, it's knowing. It's knowing that life is for us. It's knowing that we come through every dark night of the soul. It's knowing that any and every experience will help us to grow and become who we're meant to be. He says, we're always on the verge of this newer and better state of being. And that's a hope that I can truly live with.
And the one thing that I think of, especially when you talk about my life could turn out a million different ways, is that hope in that case is the opposite of hopelessness.
Right.
When I'm hopeless, there are no opportunities. This is what I'm stuck with. But so that kind of hope is moving ourselves out of hopelessness and looking at the myriad of ways that things could turn out, knowing that there are millions of things that could unfold out of that infinite potential.
Right. Right. That infinite possibility is true.
Yep.
All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our conversation. We look forward to your questions and know that we will continue to answer them as we can, either together or on our own, as the case may be. And it's just been delightful.
Thank you. Me too. It's been very fun researching the answers to the questions because, of course, we didn't really just know them right off the top of our heads.
No.
And doing this has been, of course, very fun to always do this with Reverend Tracy. Love it. So why don't you start us in a spiritual mind treatment, then I'll finish it.
I would love to. So I invite you to just take a moment, close your eyes right where you are. And breathe into that space within your own heart, that place that knows peace, that place that knows love, that is untouched by the outside world. That place of quiet within you that is always there. For this is the place within that is the very nature of the divine. That right where we are, God is by any name, energy or universe or Buddha, whether we call it love or peace or beauty. This place within us is the very power and life that we are. And I know that from this place, all things are possible. I know that in my life, the experiences of my life continue to unfold so that I might better see the divine nature, so that I might better act and move and have my being in this place of that which is good. And I know too that all that I am, all that anyone is this spirit of life in form, in expression, creating and becoming. And so I let myself relax into this love that is the very energy of life. I let myself accept that good is in my present and in my future. I let myself know that as I am evolving and becoming and life is getting better all the time, it is true also for those around me, for our world, for our planet. And that when things appear dark, I trust and know there is a new dawn. There is a new energy. There is an aspect of the infinite possibility coming into form, even as we speak. And there is a life that cannot be denied. And I pass my word to Reverend Jennifer.
And so, yes, I recognize that infinite potential, that infinite presence of good that is right where I am. That infinite presence of creativity and of love and of beauty and of good that fills everything that I see and everything that I don't see. For this is the one and only power and presence. And it is everywhere present, in and through and around and as everything in this universe. And so recognizing today that the will of God is none other than to express in its fullness, and that we are each incarnations, individualized expressions of that one, I recognize that all that we could ever need, want, desire is already right here within us, already all around us. And the desire of this universe is to unfold it in our lives. And so I surrender my littleness. I surrender my doubt and fear into this potential, into peace and into wholeness and into good and into power. And so what a blessing it is to be living this life in that divine presence. And so yes, as I know this for me and for each one of us here, I know this about every person on this planet, that divine presence is unfolding itself in every heart, in every home, in every country, in every political situation as the perfect solution that is supporting all of humanity in its thriving, in its fulfillment, in its joy, in its connection and oneness. And so I just relax into this presence in peace and in acceptance and in gratitude. And I release this prayer with absolute expectation, knowing that it is so because it has always been the spiritual truth. And so I just step into that, and I relax into that, and I let it be. And I say, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you all.
And so blessings to you this week. We'll see you next week.
Know that you are loved. Till next time.